So I came across this unusual story among many stories that have been coming out lately that have been really crazy. So this is in regards to landlords. So as you know, there is still a moratorium that has been extended from all the way to 2020 March, early March, and it was extended, and there had been a lot of worry that it was going to end, and it did end. But then with activism and with a lot of people, and I mean millions of people, that really needed the help and that still do need the help. And I'm not just saying just renters, there's homeowners as well that are in this, and landlords alike. There has been a lot of up and down and debate whether this moratorium was even supposed to go this long and if it's even fair. The landlords have been going to court and they've been filing lawsuits. There's also been tenants that have been in court, and they don't have always the same representation that the landlords do. And so it makes the situation seem unfair because you have several situations going on. And so there are still a lot of people that are on unemployment who have not found jobs that are suitable enough to go back to. And a lot of this comes at a time during a pandemic where now we are in 2021 and we're in August, and there are now, for a lot of these jobs, there's mask mandates, there's vaccine mandates, 1.3 million military personnels or people who are in the service must get vaccinated. Now, I heard that this morning, and there are many jobs that are not even, it used to be where they were saying that you could have the option of taking the test every week. There are jobs now that are really saying, no, you must vaccinate. If you want to stay employed, you must vaccinate. And so it has gotten to that point now because we are no longer just looking at COVID-19. We're looking at this variant of the original virus that started the shutdowns, the fear, and now we're in this. And now we have all of these heated debates over whether this moratorium is fair or it's not fair. Well, I came across this story and I found it to be unusual because this is a landlord that kills two and he wounds one in a rent dispute, and this happened in Vegas. And so usually you don't see stories like this as often. The stories that I had been seeing were, landlords where they went to court to sue because they wanted money. And speaking of that, I will go to that one next. And when you see that story, that doesn't really look so good either. So landlord kills two and wounds one in rent dispute in Vegas, the police say. And this is by the writer Ken Ritter. So Las Vegas, this is out of Associated Press, a landlord, he argued with his live-in tenants over unpaid rent before opening fire with a handgun at a small house near downtown Las Vegas. This was early Tuesday, killing two women. He actually killed them, and he wounded a man who suffered 9 gunshot wounds. This is what the police say. So the suspect, a man that was in his late 70s, surrendered after a standoff with the police. Now, he's the landlord. The police who arrived around 12:30 a.m. to find one woman dead outside the pink one-story home, and the wounded man coming out the door, Police Lieutenant Ray Spencer said. So police SWAT officers, they had a team that found the second woman dead inside the house. This is what Spencer said. So the names of the dead women and the wounded man all are in their 50s. Okay. And they were not immediately made public, so they didn't make the names of the people public. Probably by now they may end up doing that. But the man that was shot 9 times, he's in critical condition in the hospital, and he was expected to survive. This is what Spencer said. So the police confiscated what was a 9mm handgun from the homeowner that was being questioned about the whole incident. So he was expected to be jailed pending a court appearance on murder and attempted murder charges. This is what was in the article. So the suspect's identity was not released immediately, and there was a dispute that started yesterday over money that was owed for rent. So that's how this whole thing got started. And so one of the women had left the 3-bedroom house and returned before the fatal confrontation took place. So we don't know the specific details. They don't know all of the specifics, but the information from the witnesses is that it was over money that wasn't paid for their portion of the rent. So this is what Spencer said in an interview with the Associated Press. So, wow, I thought that was pretty crazy. And so that a landlord would kill 2 people and shoot a person 9 times, almost nearly killing them, almost killed 3 people over unpaid rent. And so that's what the dispute was over. And so now to move to the next landlord issue, and this is in LA, which really isn't that far from Vegas. What, about a couple of hours? So this story isn't good either. So this is by David Zanizer, and correct me if I'm wrong about the last name, but this landlord is suing LA, the city of LA, and who knows, maybe the county, with the amount here for $100 million, saying anti-eviction law caused astronomical losses. Wait a minute. When you find out who this person is, you might want to think twice about this lawsuit. So, this is the LA scene, and you might even be seeing one of his properties in the background off the freeway, and you actually are. When you look at one of those buildings that's sitting next to the freeway, he owns. So it is called the Orsini, which is left, is one of several buildings that have incurred financial losses as a result of the eviction moratorium, according to the new lawsuit that was filed for the city of Los Angeles. And so anybody that lives here in LA has probably driven past this building, and this isn't the only building that this guy owns. So one of the region's most prolific apartment builders has sued the city, so it is the city of LA, over COVID-19 eviction moratorium, saying that his companies have experienced astronomical financial losses and are legally entitled to compensation from the city. Now, if you've ever seen this management group or the signage, this is who this person is. So it's GHP Management Corp, which is owned by a real estate developer, Geoffrey Palmer is his name. He said in his lawsuit that 12 buildings that it manages have experienced more than $20 million in lost rental income as a result of the measure that is happening now. And so, which is the moratorium is referring to. So GHP, which filed the lawsuit along with several other Palmer companies, expects that the number to triple by the time the moratorium's provisions have expired. And so the city enacted its temporary eviction restrictions. Now, this is about the moratorium. So March 2020, just as COVID-19 was triggering, businesses shut down. That threw people out of work, and it was barring buildings owners from forcing out tenants who could not pay their rent because of the hardships that were caused or incurred by the pandemic. So Geoffrey Palmer's companies alleged that the moratorium, first put in place by Mayor Eric Garcetti as an emergency order, then approved as an ordinance by the city council, violated the takings clause, is what he calls it, which was established in the Fifth Amendment, which says that private property shall not be taken for public use without just compensation. So Palmer's company said that they are entitled to more than $100 million. So while the eviction moratorium ostensibly protects tenants who are unable to pay rent due to the circumstances related to COVID-19's pandemic, it arbitrarily shifts the financial burden onto the property owners, many of whom were already suffering financial hardship as a result of the pandemic and have no equivalent remedy at law. This is what the lawsuit was saying, which was filed last week. So it's not J, but it's GHP Management, property management subsidiary of GH Palmer Associates, which owns more than 15,000 apartments in Southern California. So this person owns, or the person that runs this owns more than 15,000 apartments right here in Southern California, according to the company's websites. So Palmer, who is the owner of G.H. Palmer Associates, is known for developing apartment blocks in and around the downtown of Los Angeles with Mediterranean features and Italian names called. Now, you may be living in one of these, or you may be familiar driving past it, which I definitely am, because some of these apartment buildings are located in the USC area around the university. And downtown. So Medici, Lorenzo Piero. And so, asked about the filing, City Attorney Mike Fuhrer defended the moratorium, saying that his office wrote a lawful ordinance that has kept tenants from becoming homeless during this pandemic. So we defeated a previous attack on the crucial protections and will vigorously defend the ordinance again, he said. So GHP has filed a second lawsuit over anti-eviction measures enacted by Los Angeles County. So I was right, the county as well. So it's not only the city, it's the county, because I know I saw that. And the state of California, that case seeks yet another $50 million and deals with apartment buildings in Santa Clarita. So this person has a lot of property, which means there's a lot of tenants, and there's a lot of people that were affected, and more than likely, most of those tenants were affected. So the legal filings come less than 2 months after Governor Gavin Newsom extended the state's eviction moratorium until September 30th, which it is now extended again. So it had ended, then they extended it, offering to cover 100% of the back rent and utilities owed by many low-income residents whose finances were hurt by COVID-19 pandemic. And so that's what the purpose of the moratorium was, is to help people buy them at least some time so that they could sign up for rent relief or some type of help, rental assistance help, or maybe, get enough money together to get the rent paid down low enough that they won't have to worry about getting evicted, that it's doable. Um, but unfortunately, this is what we're presented with. There's this debate back and forth with landlords and tenants over whether this is fair. So in the article, it says both renter and landlord may apply for these rent relief programs. Okay, so landlords seeking aid must provide information from their tenants showing that their income qualifies them for relief according to the state's website. So Tracy Jean Rosenthal, a member of the Los Angeles Tenants Union, said that the state program ensures that Palmer will receive every dollar that he is owed. Still, Rosenthal said that she does not believe that he's entitled to that money. So I am not at all convinced that his right to the profits by the means of passive income should take precedence over the very lives of tenants in LA or Los Angeles, that is, whose incomes were severed by the pandemic and by public health orders that directed them to isolate and quarantine, she said. So Rosenthal and other organizers for renters' rights have argued that the city's law was not a true moratorium since it did not prohibit building owners from filing eviction cases in court, which that happened. So some people still, even with the moratorium in place, there were landlords that were able to get around and evict tenants, I guess in situations where things might have been more extreme. Maybe there wasn't that relationship. Maybe they didn't feel that they were ever going to be able to pay them back, so they went ahead and figured out ways to evict people, even with the moratorium going on. So some people are in those predicaments and they're in court trying to fight to try to fix their situation, maybe try to make it so that they're able to rent somewhere else, because once you get those evictions, it makes it harder for you to find other places to live. So in many cases, she said tenants simply moved out of fear instead of fighting those cases, and they lost in court after failing to make a defense because they don't have the same, support, lawyers, attorneys to fight for them in their situations in most cases. So in February, the city's housing officials reported that they had distributed more than $98 million in subsidies to those affected by the pandemic in 2020. But of that total, 56% was paid to landlords and 44% directly to the tenants. So Palmer is a major donor. He's a Republican. So he's a major donor to the Republican Party and a player in local, state, and national politics. So he's no stranger when it comes to political situations. So far this year, he had put $200,000 into the recall committee targeting Gavin Newsom, and at least $110,000 into the effort to recall LA's County District Attorney George Gascon, according to the state records. So he has the money to do this. So let's go on. Palmer hosted a fundraiser as well for the President Trump in 2019 and was identified a year later as one of Trump's top donors in California. So Larry Gross, executive director of the Tenants' Right Group Coalition for Economic Survival, said that Palmer's lawsuit, if successful, would wreak havoc on the city's siphoning money from basic city services and throwing into question efforts to keep COVID-19 homelessness under control, which is a big problem right now, and it has been for some time. So this is both an economic and health issue to ensure that people can maintain roofs over their heads right now, he said. So attorneys for Palmer's companies did not respond to the Times inquiries. So in their lawsuit against the city, They said that the eviction moratorium had led to rent losses of more than $2.7 million at Palmer's Medici project in the downtown of LA, nearly $2.8 million at the Da Vinci, which is 526 units complex along the 101 and the 110 freeway interchange, and nearly $3.9 million at the Summit at Warner Center, an apartment property in Woodland Hills. So he has a lot of property. Because of the city's ordinance, lenders have refused to refinance the loans on properties that are managed by GHP, causing additional economic harm, the lawsuit states. So Palmer's companies also contend that they will have little success in recouping losses from their tenants after the year grace period that follows the end of the city's COVID-19 emergency. So that's what a lot of the landlords look at. They not only look at the fact that you haven't been paying any rent, but they look at how much rent do you owe, and if this moratorium ends, will you be able to pay it back? And if it looks like it's a lot of money that you owe, and it doesn't look like it's money that you would be able to actually pay back, that's when they make those decisions about the people that they'd rather deal with and the ones they'd rather not. Because they can see from the situation that it's not a situation that is easily fixable. If you're like 20, 30, 40,000, 50,000 behind in rent, and you're living in that apartment and you're not working, that doesn't look like something that you'll be able to pay back in a year. So that's probably what most of these landlords are looking at. And so the city orchestrated a regulatory regime designed to provide a compulsory and de facto rent forgiveness to be foisted on landlords throughout the city, the lawsuit states. So Palmer has tangled with the city before, so he's no stranger to issues having to do with the city. So a 3-judge panel, and this was back in 2009, strike down rules requiring developers near downtown to provide a specific percentage of affordable housing. So we had this issue with homelessness and this issue of families that were looking for apartments that are affordable. Affordability is a big issue here in the most metropolitan cities. And so this was something that Palmer dealt with before. And so there was a rule that was requiring developers near the downtown of LA to provide specific percentages of affordable housing. So if you have this big high rise and you have all these apartments, you got to at least make a certain percentage of them affordable to people with low income. So what did Palmer do? Let's read on. It says it required them near the downtown to provide a specific percentage of affordable housing in their residential project, but the decision dealt a major setback to the city's affordable housing efforts, said Gross, the tenants' right advocate. So his hands are not clean in regards to the housing crisis, and we are now facing, he added. So that's basically the story. So he basically didn't want to have that percentage that they were looking at of affordable housing. He wanted to make all of the apartments market rate, which really aren't affordable at all. And so that's what it's looking like. So let me read that again. Palmer has tangled with the city before persuading a 3-judge panel in 2009 to strike down rules requiring developers near downtown to provide a specific percentage of affordable housing. So he wasn't for that. He wanted everything to be where you could charge the highest market rate rent. And so that's the problem we've had here in California throughout. That there's not enough housing and not enough affordable housing. That is, it's the main issue, and that's why you see a lot of homelessness as well. Because some people are like one paycheck away from being outdoors or not unable to pay their rent, and there's many other factors that can make you 1 or 2 paychecks away from a situation of not being able to afford where you live. If it isn't your medical bills, it could be maybe your personal bills that you have incurred from other issues that might be having to be a big problem with your finances. It could be a car accident. It could be a mix of things. You get hurt, or now we've got this Delta. Some people might get sick and be hospitalized, and I heard those hospital bills are not cheap at all. As a matter of fact, there are some people that are being harassed by I believe they're uh, billing companies that will call if you have any surgeries or anything that you had to do health related, and if you owe, they will come and they will harass you just like a credit card people will harass you about back owed. If you're grossly behind, if they don't see any activity, if it looks like you're not paying, or you're not paying fast enough, whatever the reason may be. And so a lot of people are in these situations, and so they might be one or two checks away from that disaster. So this is a story that is not unusual. It's just, you know, I'd also like to mention there was a situation too where you had one of the there was one of the persons that was over. Um, I believe his name was Wazer. Well, anyway, they had someone that was over L.A. Um, an official. He was one of the officials, and he was actually getting like perks, money, trips, um, for allowing developers to come in and build these high rises that were really, really unaffordable. It didn't look like they were looking out for the best interests of the people that are here in these cities, like families and working class people. It's more for people who are, you know, maybe high income earners, or maybe they're not looking to stay long term, but they're looking to pay out a lot of money to rent out like luxury condos and what have you. And so there was a lot of greed and a lot of looked like bribery going on. And so there was a story not long ago where they actually, I believe, this person was held accountable uh, legally for his actions in taking place by allowing developers to come in and take property that they could have possibly used to make affordable housing. This is what it looked like. And so this is not uncommon. Then you have these people who they bought up a lot of property, and their whole thing is not for the people. It's more for their own benefit and passive income. And in any situation like this arise, they're ready to pounce. And so they're ready to go to court and sue the city or sue the county of LA. And so that would put us in a whole nother situation right now. We're not in a position where the city of LA and the county of LA can pay out this type of money when you have so many people who their lives are hanging in balance due to this pandemic. And it isn't over. It looks like there's a surge going on right now, present, where hospitals are filling up and numbers are starting to not only triple, but they're starting to quadruple, double, and do more than that, where people are going back to the ICU and filling up hospital beds. And so it's very uncertain right now. And so this is not the time or the place for any of this. So I thought these articles weren't unusual because it just seems like it adds more insult to injury when you see things like this. Here you have a landlord, you see where their mindset is. Kills two women and almost nearly killed a man. over unpaid rent. And then you have this other landlord who he has 15,000 properties, and his main claim to fame is getting money. And if he doesn't get his way, then he's in court to get more money. And he doesn't even look at the situation for what it is. You know, he's not thinking about the pandemic. His thing is his money and in his pocket. And where is it going? You know, all to this person here that owns all these properties, one that sits smack dab off the 101 and 110 interchange. And so we see that here. So that just tells you where some of the landlord's mindset is at. There's probably a lot more that think like this, but they have not the best interest in the people that live in their properties. And so, having said that, I'm going to let this go, but this is pretty horrific to see that a landlord will take it upon himself to get a 9mm and kill two and almost nearly kill a third over unpaid rent. It's not uncommon. Now, the times we're living in, crime has spiked, but now it is like gotten really crazy to where you see the landlords actually taking it upon themselves to shoot the residents, all because they're not able to come up with the rent money during the pandemic. Thanks for listening.